Remove compression rings and scraper ring. To avoid breaking, rings must not be stretched more than is necessary to slip them off piston. Use thickness gauge to check that assembly clearance between rings and piston seat is as prescribed. Insert ring on cylinder and use thickness gauge to check ring clearance. Insert compression rings according to notches and ring assembly direction. Rings must be staggered at angles of about 120 degrees between each other. Remove the 4 column nuts from inside the block and the 6 nuts outside. Insert a bar in engine union tie rod seat to chassis. Then use a plastic mallet to lightly hit the rod to get the 2 half blocks to separate. Remove top block, taking care not to damage contact surface. Remove driving shaft complete with connecting rods and half bearings. Unscrew oil pressure sensor from top block and remove timing shaft check bushing and then slip out the shaft and tappets and classify them. Check that junction surfaces are whole, not either dented or scratched. Remove liquid sealant with trichloroethylene. Check that stud bolt threading is not dented or stripped. If so, replace stud bolt or bolts. Clean all lubricant channels of the 2 blocks with compressed air. Lubricate and reinsert tappets. Reposition timing shaft on top block seat and lubricate and lock timing shaft stopper union into place. Insert half bearing on timing and flywheel sides with shoulders on top block and lubricate parts assembled. Insert lubricated blocking ring on driving shaft and reposition the assembly on engine block, making sure conrods are correctly inserted in their seats. Put lubricated half bearings back in their housings in bottom block. Cover block junction surfaces with prescribed fluid sealant. Couple the 2 blocks, making sure the 2 surfaces adhere perfectly by lightly hitting them with a mallet, and crosswise tighten the 4 center stud bolts and external nuts to the prescribed torque. Once the driving shaft, complete with conrods, has been removed from the top block, remove screws and separate conrod from small end, making sure reference marks and assembly direction are followed. Remove half bearings from conrods and small ends. Repeat for other conrod. With a micrometer, check conrod pin diameter measurement on the orthogonal axes and in the working area of the half bearings. Check bearing housing measurement on both timing and flywheel sides. After replacing screws to prescribed torque in the conrod without half bearings, use centesimal comparator to measure the external diameter of half bearing housing. Use round-tipped micrometer to measure thickness of the 2 half bearings. Check that bushings in conrod I do not show signs of seizing pits or deep scratching. If so, they must be replaced. Reassemble conrods in driving shaft seat on conrod pin by tightening the screws to the prescribed torque. Check reference marks and assembly direction. Make sure that assembly clearance of conrods and driving shaft shoulders complies with prescribed values. Driving shaft disassembly. Disassemble driving shaft conrods. Unscrew oil plug and thoroughly clean oil ducts and passages to conrods and main journal. Caution: driving shaft is nitrided, therefore cannot be ground. If wear, ovalization or deep scratching has occurred, driving shaft must be replaced. Remove oil filter securing screw to sump. Remove cartridge filter. Remove screws securing oil sump to engine block and take sump out and slide gasket off. Remove oil level indicator. Flatten safety plate. Remove mesh filter blocking screw and filter from oil sump. Check mesh filter for dirt. If so, wash and clean with compressed air. Insert filter, safety plate and tighten securing screw. Bend safety plate. Position gasket between oil sump and block. Take care to position gasket correctly, since incorrect assembly causes anomalous oil circulation. Crosswise tighten sump screws and lock them with dynamometric spanner to prescribed torque. Insert filter cartridge and tighten screw to prescribed torque. After disassembling timing, unscrew Allen screws and remove oil pump from engine block. Disassemble pump as follows. Remove locking spline. Take pump drive shaft out with inside rotor attached. Remove external rotor. Slip bearings and their internal housing out of pump body. Assemble oil pump and reposition on block according to the two centering dowels. Lock Allen screws to the prescribed torque and make sure the draw shaft revolves freely. Use appropriate spanner to unscrew adjustment valve fitted to threaded hole of block. Insert valve and spring and use dynamometric spanner to tighten the screw covered with thread locking paste to prescribed torque. Once the gearbox clutch housing has been fixed to the vice-held support, use the nut holding tool to loosen the nut by turning the shaft with the appropriate tool. Remove the Allen screws locking the clutch housing to gearbox. Disconnect and remove housing, complete with clutch shaft, by lightly hitting housing sides. Remove gasket. Remove the 3 screws with washers and take off bearing blocking plate. Unscrew clutch shaft securing nut. Take out clutch shaft, remove clutch and blocking ring. Mount clutch shaft on housing so that the gear engages the main shaft gear. Insert the prescribed holding tool in the clutch shaft grooves. Remove the intermediate gear blocking nut and take out the shoulder washer. Remove gear and clutch shaft. Unscrew breather plug with its pawl. Unscrew and remove idle gear indicator. Unscrew gearbox cover bolts and remove it with the help of a mallet. Loosen counter nut and remove the eccentric screw to position pre-selector. Slide pre-selector out and remove pre-selector blocking ring. After loosening securing screws of blocking plates, carry on with unit removal, complete with gear, shafts and forks. After remounting the unit, complete with shafts on gearbox cover, insert the spring and insert the two tangs on the pre-selector peg, making sure the distance between the two tangs is equal both on the peg and at tang ends. Remount eccentric screw and counter nut on cover, taking care that the eccentric part of the screw is oriented towards the pre-selector nut. Reassemble pre-selector spacer. Place pre-selector on the cover, making sure that the two spring tangs are inserted in the hollow of the adjustment screw. Then rotate the screw by 90 degrees and tighten counter nut. Remount gasket. Tighten securing screws of gearbox housing cover to prescribed torque. Insert gear with relative washer on main shaft of gear and tighten securing knot to prescribed torque and stake with punch. Insert clutch shaft with the help of a plastic mallet. Remount Seeger and then blocking ring. Position blocking plate and tighten screws with washer after covering them with thread locking paste. Position clutch housing gasket and place clutch housing in its seat. Tighten Allen screws, external screws, and tighten to prescribed torque. Tighten clutch shaft nut using the appropriate tool and stake. Insert breather plug. Screw in gear in idle indicator. Insert clutch pushrod in shaft with the greater diameter towards the control lever.